Tonight on Dispatches, how British policy is influenced by supporters of a foreign power.
Something became skewed in British politics when an unelected friend of the Prime Minister had so much influence.
Dispatches reveals the activities of the most effective lobby working inside British political parties.
The pro-Israeli lobby in this country is the most powerful political lobby. There's nothing to touch them.
We investigate the Israel lobby's bankrolling of British politicians.
I don't believe, and I don't think anybody else would believe, that these contributions come with no strings attached.
The Israeli invasion of Gaza earlier this year caused huge controversy. A few months later, the Conservative Friends of Israel held its annual lunch for conservative politicians and businessmen. This year, the star speaker was David Cameron. I was astonished to note that he made no reference to the widespread killing of innocent civilians and massive destruction in Gaza 6 months earlier. Indeed, Cameron went out of his way to praise Israel because, so he said, it strives to protect innocent life. He said, "If I become Prime Minister, Israel has a friend who will never turn his back on Israel." I resolved to ask questions. How does the pro-Israel lobby in Britain work? Who runs it? And how does it get results? What's clear is that support for Israel is a powerful presence in all the main parties. Look at this recent exchange in the House of Commons when David Amess, Secretary of the Conservative Friends of Israel, asked what the government was doing to improve British relations with Israel. Ivan Lewis, the Foreign Office Minister who had been Deputy Chair of the Labour Friends of Israel, replied,
"Israel is a close ally of the UK, and we have regular warm and productive exchanges at all levels. We shall continue to foster a close relationship with Israel."
There's people who are very strongly supportive of Israel, yes, and you know the Conservative Friends of Israel, the Labour Friends of Israel are all part of that.
Yes, there is a pro-Israeli lobby, and it's active in trying to define the debate in order to limit the options that British politicians can choose to options which would be acceptable to that lobby.
So how does the lobby work? Money plays a big part. Millions of pounds in donations from businessmen and others into the bank accounts of politicians and political parties. The Conservative Friends of Israel is one of Westminster's most active lobbying groups. It claims as its members 80% of all Conservative members of Parliament. Watford, north of London. Inside this church hall, a Conservative Party candidate for the next election, Richard Harrington, is trying to win over the locals. Voters in Watford may not be aware that Richard Harrington is also chairman of the Conservative Friends of Israel. Individual CFI members have given him over £20,000 in the last year, and out of his own pocket he's given £34,000 to Conservatives. And that's not all. Mr. Harrington is also director of the Number 10 Club, one of the Conservatives' big donor clubs, which, in return for an annual membership donation of up to £50,000 to party funds, will arrange for you to have tea with David Cameron or meet William Hague. Aside from raising cash, some of the pro-Israel lobbies in Parliament also pay for and arrange trips to Israel. They have sent almost as many MPs and candidates on trips to Israel as have been made by all MPs to the United States and Europe combined over the last 8 years. I've been on one of these trips, and to do justice to the Conservative Friends of Israel, I came under no pressure to write in their favour. But for some politicians, these can be trips with a difference. 2 years ago, the CFI took 20 parliamentary candidates to Israel. When they got back, 10 of them received donations totalling £30,000 from CFI sponsors.
Do you think there's a connection between the, on the whole, surprisingly soft line the Conservative Party takes towards the foreign policy of the Israeli state and the pattern of donors to the Conservative Party?
Well, I think in the past there has been a connection between the people who gave money, but who we met and we talked to, who were passionately concerned about Israel, and obviously we listened to their concerns. And in some ways we reflected them.
But they don't like to talk about it, at least not in public. One Tory MP privately taunted me to make a film about the pro-Israeli lobby. He said, "You don't have the guts, they're the biggest lobby in Westminster, and it's a big story." But when I went back to this courageous individual and say, "Hey, come on television and tell us about it," he ran a mile. One Tory frontbencher was so paranoid that he insisted I didn't just turn off my mobile phone, but take out the battery in case we were being bugged. Here's how the lobby uses its influence at the highest level of British politics. 3 years ago, Israel invaded Lebanon in retaliation for Hezbollah's attacks into northern Israel, during which 2 Israeli soldiers were killed and 2 kidnapped. During the Israeli invasion that followed, 1,000 Lebanese civilians were killed and an estimated $3.6 billion worth of the Lebanese economy was destroyed. William Hague had recently been appointed Conservative Shadow Foreign Secretary. Some 21,000 in donations were sent to him by CFI board members, including hedge fund billionaire Alan Howard and again Richard Harrington.
I don't believe, and I don't think anybody else would believe, that these contributions come with no strings attached.
On July 20th, Hague made a speech. In it, he called the Israeli response disproportionate.
And I think we can say, in response to the question of my right honourable friend, that elements of the Israeli response are disproportionate, including attacks on Lebanese army units, the loss of civilian life and essential infrastructure, and such enormous damage to the capacity of the Lebanese government does damage the Israeli cause in the long term.
Moderate enough, you might think, but Lord Calmes, a leading CFI donor who owns Dixon's and was treasurer of the Conservative Party, was outraged and threatened to withdraw funding to the party.
Sir, William Hague's usual good sense has deserted him. Think again, William, for whom do you speak? Your comments are not merely unhelpful, they are downright dangerous.
No further donations were received by William Hague from CFI board members.
Well, I knew Stanley Calmes when I was the chairman of the party, and he was one of those who took the view that any criticism of Israel is effectively damaging to the Israeli state.
The Israeli lobbies appeared to want to censor British politicians from saying that elements of the Israeli reaction was disproportionate, and they appeared to be willing to use financial pressures as a way of enforcing that decision.
We've learned that after William Hague's speech, the director of the CFI, Stuart Pollack, had a meeting with David Cameron, at which it was understood that terms such as disproportionate are not the sort that Conservatives should use to describe Israeli military action. And then last June at the CFI lunch, David Cameron didn't mention Gaza at all in his speech. He said, "I look around and I see some of our biggest donors, and a special thank you to you."
He's going in front of a very large audience of very wealthy people, many of whom are going to give huge support to our party in the next election, which we need. So you don't go in and pull the tiger by the tail.
For several months, we've been investigating the finances of the Conservative Friends of Israel. Here's what we found. First, let's look at income. In the Electoral Commission register, the Tory pro-Arab lobby reported income of £83,900